Take your seats. We read to you from the Scriptures, first from the Old Testament, a story probably well known to many, the story of Cain and Abel, two brothers, but dissension broke out between them, and one brother is dead, and the other is called to give an account of himself. So Abel was born, then Cain. And Abel was a shepherd, and Cain a tiller of the soil. The day came when Cain brought some of the produce of the soil as a gift to the Lord. And Abel brought some of the firstborn of his flock, the fat portions of them. The Lord received Abel and his gift with favor. But Cain and his gift he did not receive. And Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you so angry? If you do well, you are accepted. If not, sin is a demon crouching at the door. It shall be eager for you, and you will be mastered by it." Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let us go into the open country." And while they were there, Cain attacked his brother Abel and murdered him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother?" Cain answered, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, listen. I hear your brother's blood, which you have shed, crying out to me from the ground. So now you are accursed, banished from the ground which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood, which you have shed. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield you its wealth, and you shall be a vagrant and a wanderer on the face of the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "That punishment is heavier than I can possibly bear. You have driven me today from the ground, and I must hide myself from your presence. I shall be a vagrant and a wanderer on the face of the earth, such that anyone who meets me can kill me." And the Lord answered him, No, if anyone kills Cain, Cain shall be avenged sevenfold." So the Lord put a mark on Cain, in order that anyone meeting him should not kill him. And then Cain went out from the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, to the east of Eden. Each week, this address goes out to many countries, some 56 or 60 countries. So let me say, first of all, to that wider audience today, that here we've been talking this morning with one of my first early assistants of this church, Dr. Stephen Koski from America. He was a minister with me of this congregation 25 years ago. So if you put this story together, for 25 years he has been doing his work. For 50 years, I've been doing similar work. And our task has been to commend a different way of living, a new way of being for the world, for people, for a humanity that could be different. What an extraordinarily difficult task it is, as we said in that interview today, for us to really communicate something which is so vital to our humanity, so vital to the world, that somehow we might find a way through what comes to us ever so naturally, hating, hostility, to find our way through our hating and hostility, our violence and our wars, to that different humanity, that new way of being, whereby love, a discarded word, could somehow be interpreted to all humanity. Can we, in our different roles in life, ever really take hold of those lines of Kenneth Boulding in his poem when he said, "Is love indeed the end and law of life, when lush grimacing hates so quickly sprout?" Stephen Kosky, in his ministry, I in mine, have been trying year in and year out to say to people in different ways, this word of love, this different way of being, could feasibly change the world from being hating and hostile and warlike to being a world of brothers and sisters living together in peace. In the world of language, love and hate are opposites. In the world of our everyday experience, love and hate run the same race, and they quickly change into each other's shoes. We talk love and hate run side by side, and as one swaps places with the other, we easily get confused. Are we loving or are we hating? Who do we hate and who do we love? Or we don't want to hate, we say. But then we get lost in our loving and hating, and we don't realize that we are hating. Yes, we are hating, even when we say we're not. And we're not loving, even when we say we are. Do we hate because love is impossible? Do we love because love seems better than hate? Is it? Are we troubled in our loving and hating because we are not at all clear about what loving and hating of ourselves might be? And if we're confused about the love and hate within ourselves, within our inner world, I suppose it's understandable that we do get confused about our loving and hating out in the outer world. So we don't listen to it, our inner world, and we get jammed up in the outer world. The poet John Keats, caught in the dilemmas of love, found he had to wrestle with life itself. And he used alcohol for a while, and then renounced alcohol as he wrote, "My heart aches, and a drowsing numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I have drunk." But then, lifting himself, he saw that in between loving and hating, in between longing for union and the despair of emptiness, there was a person. In between all of our loving and hating, there are people. And Keats wrote, "Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his bards, but in the viewless wings of poetry. though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee tender, tender is the night. So we're left to ponder if he saw his release in his love for another person, or was he seeking a reunion with part of himself, searching for some kind of self-completion in a wide area that we call life, our life, searching for the self and searching for the other, how the one withdraws and the other gives, how we find ourselves in the other. And when that search is not gratified, we then run into those other areas of life, what I call the allies of hate. Disappointment and anger and hostility join the race. So people search for love, but all of us can get confused about our loving, being dependent on other people, finding ways to be on our own, live ourselves, in ways that move beyond a tangled up narcissism, love of self, that tangled up negative narcissism, to find a different narcissism, a positive, life-enhancing narcissism, if only we could. Dr. Gordon Livingston, a psychiatrist in America, wrote in his book, How to Love, he said, how much easier it would be if we were more like our major appliances and came with an owner's manual. Every human being with an owner's manual, full of useful information on how to operate our bodies and our spirits. If there were such a manual, it would surely contain a chapter, he said, on how to recognize people to be wary of and people to cherish. We all know that people change over time. We're loving at this point and we're hating at that point. We love now, hate then. We change. And the experiences we thought should have all rolled our way sometimes don't roll our way. The love we once had goes stale. We know that love can dance in front of us attractively as a promise. Excitement and elevation, and then it can collapse into damage and sorrow. We keenly focus our loving and our hating on just a few key people on our stage, but loving and hating run their race on a much larger stage, as I said earlier today. So large that they eventually tell the story of human survival, in fact, loving and hating. They shape the whole character of our humanity. And yet we don't, in our public places, in our political zones, we don't talk about loving and hating. We do our loving behind doors, and we do our hating without saying we're hating. So what can we do? A few years ago, Richard Reichbart wrote an article he called The Importance of the Broken Heart. He said this is more prevalent, the broken heart is more prevalent and more significant in our lives, in everybody's lives, than we let ourselves believe. And this is the more surprising insofar as that so many of our stories and our poetry, our drama and our films, our television, finds this very issue a central theme. It provoked in me the different conditions of the human heart, the broken heart, the sorrowing heart, the angry heart, the passionate heart, the hungry heart, the divided heart, the jealous heart, the healed heart, the generous heart. There's the heart. The list goes on and on. We could write a chapter for every one of them. And we forget that underneath the words, between the words, there are people, their pain and their resilience, their destructiveness and their way, they move on. We know a great deal about destructive hearts, damaged hearts, disagreeable hearts, dejected hearts. We need to hear more about the resilient heart, the recovered heart, the revitalized heart. The Cain and Abel story that we read in church today can be reduced to a terrible, terrible scene between two brothers. Or it can be humanity writ large. Bombs in Baghdad just yesterday, the day before. Thousands of dead in Syria. The forgotten children of Africa. Put your ear to the ground and you might hear the quiet moaning of the wind, the inescapable sadness of people inflicting suffering on other people. Put your ear to the ground and you hear the quiet weeping of the wind with its inescapable call to all humanity to be a better humanity. Put your ear to the ground and you hear the quiet murmuring of the inescapable question of what will we do now that this has happened? Do we hear our brother's blood crying to us from the ground? We know this. Hate can lie unidentified in our midst, but like cancer in our body, can gradually show itself and take us over. Hate can do that. Hate can be a calculation, and by calculation we will clock up the score of how many people went to the gas ovens last week or whenever it was. Hate can be the impulse that suddenly, irrationally asserts itself without pausing to realize the consequences. And today, in this very church, some people are going to be reciting, singing from Dante's Purgatorio. It's going to be presented here. So let me pick out just a few lines. Hate can be so closed off in its purposes. And although 1,000 trumpets peal around us, still we pay no heed. There it is. Hate has long been a powerful part of the human scene. We've seen its terrible harvests. Today, hate continues to be fed by the internet, purveying of the lowest, easiest violence and hate on film and television. And we see the contagion of hate and the negative moods that go with it. There was a time when it was said, but love is stronger than hate. How can it be when so few are clear about how to love? Just one-to-one. Leave alone how to love on the wider screen. When the enemies of love are frequently very active. T.S. Eliot wrote his poem, "Last year's fruit is eaten, and the full-fed beast shall kick the empty pail. Last year's words belong to last year's language, and next year's words await another voice." We so easily join ourselves, you see, with hate, though we might prefer to call it by another name, one of its allies. We drift away from the regenerating fountain of love. We don't even talk about it. Its waters go stale, and we seek it, even though we seek it in multitudinous places. So Dante again, writing centuries ago of his journey through hell, through purgatory to paradise, saw the need to revisit that renewing stream, and he wrote, "Through the waters spilled by that spring, I was remade. Forth I fared, a new plant, with new leaves in a new time. And the stars appeared, and I began to climb again. Hate knows its way of trapping us in the past, locking us into our selective memories, even though your brother's blood cries out from the ground, even though the suffering of wide sections of humanity cry out for compassion. Every day, our ears are closed. They can go back to where they came from. And so in the New Testament story we read today, Jesus came to the home of a little girl, a damsel, it said, a little girl already dead. And the people were wailing in their grief and pain, or maybe they didn't even know what they were wailing about. But we read the story of a child. But it was much more than the story of a child. For in the death of the child, maybe we're hearing the death of some part of humanity. Sigmund Freud said he awakened us to a life that we had repressed. Something in all humanity, you see, has died. And in the dying, there's the dying of the heart of kindness, the heart of compassion. In the dying, there is the death of a creative healing. Until one, who will it be? Until one walked close to her, and taking her by the hand, he said, little maiden, stand up. Little maiden, arise. Let the child live. Give her something to eat. So in the midst of human anguish, caring and not caring, love might live again. In a couple of months' time, next month, I am to give a memorial lecture to Morris Friedman, the biographer of Martin Buber. And in that lecture I will honour also, of course, the revolution that Martin Buber brought to many zones of life, to philosophy, to religion, to psychotherapy, to education, to name only a few. Martin Buber is well known in these walls over these last 40 or so years, known chiefly for three words that have the power to change everything if you say them with authenticity. He said, let us speak, I and thou, to each other. We're well versed at speaking the other three words, I and it, wherein we treat people as objects, as items, as disposables, as objects to be used and destroyed and then forgotten. Who cares? But as soon as you say thou, I and thou, everything changes. In the biblical story, New Testament, the noise of people saw the deadness of life. But as Jesus of Nazareth said, I and thou, it opened the possibility of new life, not only for the little child, the little girl, but for them all. Soften the hardness of life. Let us hear in all the deadness of life the importance of that softness. I want you to put your ear to the ground and hear the softness of the story. Little maiden, you can stand up. Put your ear to the quiet murmuring of the depths of life that flows through this story and around us all, and you hear the deepest importance of nurturing the growth of the human spirit, the best that is in our humanity. Give her something to eat. I've been reading again Atul Gawande's book. He's one of the world's most distinguished doctors, authors. And he writes in his book of his time as a surgeon in India. This is what he wrote. Each day I was there, the surgeons found time between cases to take a brief afternoon break at a cafe across the street from the hospital. For 15 or 30 minutes, they swapped stories about their cases of the day. Just this interaction, he said, seemed to prod them to aim higher than merely getting through the day. They came to feel that they could do anything they set their minds to. Indeed, he said, they believed not only that they were parts of the larger world, but also that they could contribute to it. We can all get into our variations of love and hating, but stories like this, stories like the biblical stories mentioned here today, do a gigantic piece of work. They remind each one of us that we are part of a larger world. And in even the very smallest of ways, we can each make a contribution to it. And so the words of Dante ring true again when he said, the love of good is here restored. Would you please stand? Say with me, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And the blessing for this day. Take with you this blessing. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forwards. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.